In this video, I'm trying to build the clone of drag and drop upload feature like YouTube. I would say this is a kind of clone because I have done some modification. You can see when you drag your file, there is some kind of animation. When you drop it, you will find different beautiful animation. Similarly, I'm previewing that uploaded file. So this is a kind of another feature. And finally, I'm adding some validations. So I have given there two conditions. If you are uploading your file with invalid file format and if your file size is more than 4 megabytes, you won't be able to upload your file. Let me tell you, if you are skipping any part of video, especially JavaScript part, I would recommend to you to not to skip video because you may have difficulty in understanding. Without further ado, let's start. Hello and namaste everyone, this is Jitsaru with Coding Design. Welcome to our channel. If you are new here, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. As you can see, I have image name bg.png and you can see most of the watch time that I'm getting is from the people who are not subscribing. So please guys, if you think my content is helpful to you, then please don't forget to subscribe. And also in the same folder, I do have index.html file, and inside the index.html file, let's type exclamatory sign and hit that tab button, then you'll get this HTML5 boilerplate. And now for the title, I'm giving drag and drop upload file feature like YouTube. Now inside the body tag, let's create div with class name container, and inside that div let's create another div with class name card. And now inside the div with class name card, I'm creating another div with class name card header, and next to that div I'm creating another div with class name drop zone, and once again I'm creating another div with class name card footer. Let's hit the tab button, you will get this code. Now inside the class card header, let's create h2 heading, and I'm writing upload files. Next to that heading I'm creating div. Inside that div let's create a span tag with class name icon, and also I'm giving class name message, and I want to give the icon. Okay, so if you press Windows plus full stop, then you will get this pop-up window from where you can get the emoji icons. And also if you want to use like third-party libraries for the icon, then you can use, but as you can see, most of the video that I'm creating till now, I'm not using like third-party libraries. Okay, so I want to give this a kind of a chat emoji. Okay, so now let's create another span tag with class name icon, and again I'm adding extra class name close. For that, let's give the ampersand times. So this is HTML entity that will give you this cross symbol. And now let's go inside the div with class name card footer, and inside that I'm creating small tag, and let's write please be sure to upload only, and I'm giving different files extension inside the strong tag. And let's write files, and also let's keep the br tag, and next to that let's create another small tag, and inside that I'm writing remember your file size must be less than, and inside the strong tag let's give 4 MB. And with the help of live server extension, let's open it in our default browser. Okay, this is the output. Now let's give the link for our style.css file. So I haven't created that style.css file, so let's create now. Now inside the style.css file, for the universal selector, in order to prevent the browser's default margin and padding, I'm giving margin 0, padding 0, and also box size into border box. And for the font family, I'm giving sans serif. And now for the div with class name container, let's give the minimum height of 100 VH. And also I want to give the background. I'm using the background shorten property. So for the first value, I'm giving black color with transparent value. And for the second, let's give the URL. I'm giving that bg.png image. Okay, as you can see, it is not in the pop-up position. So let's give the position of center. And if I give the slash, I can give background size. So I'm giving cover. As you can see, this image is really bright. Okay, so I want to darken it. So with the help of background blend mode, as you can see, different browsers version that they do support this property. Okay, I'm giving darken. In the browser, as you can see, that image is darkened now. And also let's give the display flex. Justify content to center so that it would bring horizontally center, and also let's give align items to center so that it will bring the vertically center. Now let's style the div with class name card. For the class card, I'm giving the width of 70 VW. For the height, I'm giving 80 VH. For the background color, I'm giving white color. Okay. And now let's give the border radius. I'm giving border radius of 0.8 rem. So you can see now the rounded corners around the box. Now for the class container and for the class card, I want to give this common property, okay, display flex and the align items to center. So these two classes, they are sharing the same property. Now for the class card, I'm giving the flex direction of column and justify content to space between. Now let's style the div with class name card header. For the class card header, I want to give the width of 100%. And now if I type BB and hit tab button, then you will get this border bottom with shorthand property, okay. For the class card header, I want to give the same common property. And now let's give the justify content to space between. As you can see, this is exactly what I want. Now let's style these headings, and this is span tags, okay. So now for the H2 heading, I'm giving the padding of 1 rem. For the span with class name icon, I'm giving the font size of 1.6 rem. For the cursor, I'm giving pointer, and you can see when you hover, you will get that pointing hand icon. Now for the class icon with class name close, I want to give the font size of 2 rem. And for the padding, top I am giving 0, right to 1 rem, bottom to 0, and for left 0.6 rem. Now let's give some CSS property for the div with class name drop zone. For the class drop zone, I'm giving width of 75%, height of 65%. For the background color, if I give black, okay, you can see this is the drop zone, okay. For the background, I won't give that color. Instead, we'll first of all declare the variable URL. For now, we won't give any value. And also for the position, let's give center. For the background size, let's give content. Now let's give the border. For the width 0.1 rem. For the border style, I am giving dash. And for the border color, again I am declaring variable border. As you can see, if I give black color, we'll get this kind of border. For now I am giving transparent, but later on with the help of JavaScript code, we'll change it dynamically. Now it's time to give some CSS property for the class footer. For the class footer, I'm giving the padding bottom of 2 rem. And also for the text align, I'm giving center. So now you can see the text are aligned to the center. Now for the strong tag, I want to give the color something like this dark sky blue color. Now in the index.html file, inside the div with class name drop zone, I want to create another div with class name upload icon, and inside that div, let's create another div with class name arrow up, and let's duplicate this code and let's change that class to bar. Next to that div with class name upload icon, let's create h4 heading, and I'm writing drag and drop file to upload, and next to that let's create label, and inside that label I'm writing select files, and also let's give the input element with type file. And in the browser, you can see we can get that choose file button, but I want to hide that input type file, so I'm giving hidden attribute. Now you can see that input type file is hidden, but when you click that select file text, you can see you can choose or you can browse any file, so we're getting the same functionality, okay. Now let's tell that div with class name upload icon. For the class upload icon, I'm giving the width and height of 9 rem. For the background color, I want to give this dark gray color. And for the border radius, let's give 50% so that it would make circle. As you can see, these contents are not aligned properly. So for the class drop zone and for the class upload icon, we'll give this same common CSS property. And now for the class drop zone, let's give the flex direction to column. Justify content to space evenly. Now let's style the class arrow up and bar. For the class bar, I'm giving the width of 3 rem. For the height, 0.5 rem. And for the background, I'm giving that light gray color. Now for the class arrow up, let's give the width of 2.8 rem. For the height, 0.8 rem. For the background color, I'm giving the same light gray color. Now let's copy this same code and let's paste it there. And now instead of that justify content to space evenly, let's give center. Now for the class arrow up, let's give some margin bottom of 0.5 rem. And now let's use the clip path to create that arrow up icon. Okay, so I'm using clip path polygon, so I'm giving the different coordinates so that I can create that arrow up icon. Okay, this is exactly what I want. Now in order to give something like arrow moving effect, for the div with class name upload icon, I want to give the before pseudo class, and let's give the position of absolute. Now you have to give the position of relative. Now for the before pseudo class, you have to give this content property, otherwise it won't be visible. For the content, let's give empty string. And for the width, I'm giving 0.2 rem. For the height, I'm giving 40%. And for the background color, I'm giving the same light gray color with some transparent value at the center, as you can see. And also let's give the border radius of 0.2 rem. So now I want to create the same multiple vertical bar. I'll take the help of box shadow. So for the x offset, I'm giving -1 rem. For the y offset, I'm giving -2 rem. For the color, I'm giving same light gray color with transparent value. And also let's give the comma and let's give another box shadow. For the x offset, I'm giving -1.8 rem. For the y offset, let's give 2 rem. And for the color, I'm giving same light gray color. Now let's duplicate it for more 2 times. And let's change the values. Okay, now I want to speed up the process, so the process is same. So now you can see with the help of this code, I have created the multiple bars with some border radius. Now let's give the transform translate y. I'm giving -276%. As you can see, these bars are taken at the top. And let's give the animation. For the animation name, I'm giving slide down. For the duration, I'm giving 0.5 seconds. For the timing function, let's give linear. Now let's give the keyframes. For the slide down at 100%, let's duplicate the same code and let's change that translate to y to plus 276% again. Okay, as you can see this animation, let's make it infinite. But you can see the bars are overflowing. So for the class upload icon, let's give overflow hidden. Now it's perfect. Now for the label, let's give the class upload file. And now let's tell this class upload file. For the background, I want to give the same dark sky blue color. Let's give the padding. For the padding top, I'm giving 1 rem. For the left and right, 1.2 rem. Now let's give the border radius. For the border radius, I'm giving 0.4 rem. And also let's give text transform. I'm giving uppercase. Now let's give the cursor to pointer. Now it's time to create the script.js file. Now let's link our script.js file just above the end of body tag. I'm giving script tag and let's give link for our script.js file. Now in the script.js file, we'll select this div with class name card, this class name close, div with class name drop zone, and also we want to select this input element with type file. Okay, so I'm creating the constant variable card and I'm giving document.querySelector. Let's give the class card. I'm giving comma so that I won't use that constant keyword multiple times. Let's give the close equal to document.querySelector and I'm giving the class close. Let's duplicate this code and let's change that variable names. Okay, and let's change that class names. As you know, that input field is inside that div with class name drop zone. So now when you click on close icon, first of all, let's confirm. Let's write are you sure? In the browser, if I click that cross icon, you can see this pop-up window will appear. And if I hit that OK button, then it will return true. If I hit cancel, it will return false. So let's store that value inside the decision variable. And I'm giving the condition if decision. So if the decision returns to true, that means okay. Then for the div with class name card, let's give the class list. Let's add this inactive class. So for the class card, let's give the dot inactive. So there won't be any space. Okay, remember that. Let's give opacity of 0. So now when you click and when you cancel, it won't apply that opacity 0, but if you hit that OK button, then you can see that white box will disappear, but there was no any transition. So for that, let's give the transition, I'm giving duration of 0.5 second, and for the time function, let's give easy out. With that opacity 0, let's give the transform, I'm giving scale 0.9, and for the translate y -10%. So once again, if I click that cross icon and hit OK, then you can see that animation. But if I inspect the element, you can see still you can get that all the elements that was there. Okay, so in order to prevent that, I'm using set timeout method, and for the time period, let's give 600, that means 0.6 second, and inside that let's give car.style.display is equal to none. So once again, if you inspect, now you can see that element is completely gone. Now let's give some different events for the debug class name dropZone. For the class dropZone, let's add the event listener. I'm listening to the drag over event, and for the second parameter, let's give the drag over. Let's duplicate it for 2 times, and let's change that drag over to drag leave. I'm changing simultaneously, okay, and also we'll give drop event. Now let's duplicate this code. Now it's time to add the event for that input element. So now when you are listening to the change event, we are invoking the same drop function. But as you can see, these functions, they are not defined. So now let's create these functions. So let's write function drag over. Now let's duplicate it for 2 times. Now let's change that drag over to drag leave and also drop. So inside that each functions, I'm using the console.log so that we'll get the info whether that events were triggered or not, okay. Now in the browser, if I drag this file, and you can see when you take to that drop zone, drag over event is triggered, and when I leave that drop zone, that drag leave event is triggered again. And if I drop the file, so this is what you find the default behavior of browser. So it will, when you drop your file, it will automatically open your file. So now we have to prevent this. So for that, let's pass the e as event for both drag over and drop function, and let's give e.prevent default so that we'll prevent that default behavior, okay. So let's give the same thing for the drop function too. Now let's remove this console.log, okay. Now when you drag over your file for the drop zone, let's give the class. So I'm adding the class drag over, but this drag over class is not given in the style.css file. So let's go to the style.css file, and for the class drop zone, let's give the drag over class. So there won't be any space. I'm again telling you there won't be any space. Now as you can see, for the border at the beginning, I have even color of transparent. So now it's time to change that border color dynamically. So I'm giving variable border, and let's give the black, and also let's change that as per headings text, which is inside the debug class name drop zone. So now with the help of that query selector, let's select that as per heading, which is inside the drop zone, and let's write dot inner text is equal to release file to upload. Now when you drag your file, you can see you will get that border, and also the as per headings text content is changed, okay. But now what about when you just go outside of that drop zone? So now when you are leaving that drop zone, let's duplicate this code, and now instead of that adding drag over class, we'll remove that drag over class from that class drop zone. And also let's duplicate this code, and now we'll change that as per headings back to that original text, okay. And also as you can see, this drop function is triggered whenever you are listening to the drop and the change event. So that change event is for that select file buttons, okay, and that drop event is for the when you are dropping your file. So as you can see, when you take your file to the drop zone, there is border around that drop zone. When you take outside or when you leave that drop zone, that border is hidden, and also that as for headings text is also changed. Now in the drop function, you can declare something like event type is equal to e.type. So with the help of this code, you can get the type of event. So now let's wrap it inside the if. So I'm giving the condition if event type that is equal to change, then in that case, first of all, let's declare the file variable. And for the file variable, let's give e.target.files, and in the else part, let's give, that is for the drop event, let's give file is equal to e.dataFileTransfer.files. So we have to give this if else condition because we can't use the same technique to access the file. Now let's see it in the console, what kind of value we are storing in this file variable. Now if I drag and drop this file in the console, you can see you will get that file list which is stored in the array. So in order to access that first file, you have to give their bracket 0. So we are accessing the first file. Once again, if I drag and drop this file, you can see all the information of the file, something like file name, size, type. Now I'm again declaring another variable, file format, and I'm giving file.type. So with the help of this code, we are getting the file format of the file that you have drag and dropped or you have selected. And let's create another variable, valid formats. So we'll store different file formats within the array. So let's give something like image/jpg, and we'll give different file formats. Okay, something like png, svg, GIF images. Now we will check whether the file format that you have selected that would match within this valid format array. Okay, so I'm giving if valid format dot includes, let's pass that file format variable. So now if your file format it matches within that file format array, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. So if the condition is true, then let's console.log valid format. So if I drag and drop this file, you can see valid format. But if I drag and drop this PDF file, then you can see there is no any result. Okay, so now we'll check the size of file. For that, let's give let size in MB is equal to, you can give something like file.size, but the file size that you get will be in bytes. So now it's time to convert it into KB. You can give something like divide by 1024, and if you wrap it inside that small bracket and give the times 1024, then it will convert it into MB. Okay, but when you are converting that bytes into MB, you will get that long decimal digit. So in order to prevent that, I'll give .2 fixed, so I'm giving 4. So now we'll get only the 4 decimal digit value. Now if our file has valid format, then again we will check if that file size in MB that would be greater than 4, then we'll call invalid file and we'll pass the message something like file size was more than 4 MB. Else we'll call to upload file function and we'll pass that file. Okay, but if the file format is not valid, then for that let's skip that else statement. Let's duplicate the same invalid file function and let's change that message to invalid file format, and I'm concatenating with, let's give that file format dot split and I'm giving slash. So with the help of this code, we will create different items of array. Whenever it will find the slash in this string, so you'll get something like image comma png or jpg or something like that. So in order to get that second item or second value, I have to give their bracket 1 so that I can get that exact file format that you have selected, and I'm giving dot to uppercase, so we are changing that string into the uppercase. And now let's concatenate with this string is not supported, but as you can see we haven't created that invalid file as well as upload file function. So now let's create that functions. I'm writing function invalid file and I'm passing msg as argument. As you can see, when you are calling that invalid file function, we are passing the message, so we are getting that message as msg. And for the upload file, let's duplicate this code and let's change it to upload. Let's remove that msg and let's console.log the upload success. Now if I drag this file and if I drop, you can see upload success. As you can see, the file format and the size, it meets our condition, so our upload was success. So let's check like what if the file size is higher than 4 MB. So for that, let's give the extra file format. I'm giving video mp4 file format. Okay, so now if the file format is valid but the file size is higher or more than 4 MB, then it needs to call the invalid file function. Okay, so now let's delete this code. When the invalid file function is triggered for the drop zone, let's select that as per heading of that drop zone, and for the inner text, let's give that message. So now when I drag and drop that video mp4 file, as you can see, although our file format was valid file format but the file size was more than 4 MB, so invalid file function was triggered. Now what if I drag and drop that PDF file? Now we can see that invalid message. Similarly, let's indicate like that was the invalid file. So now when invalid function is triggered for the drop zone, let's add the class. I'm giving the class list dot add invalid, but in the style.css file we haven't kept that invalid class for the class drop zone. So now let's give it for the class drop zone, let's keep dot invalid. So now let's change that border variable's color to crimson, this variable. and also let's give color to crimson. So now once again, if I drag and drop that PDF file, red color text, but okay, you can see that red color text in that upload file button, and also we are not getting that red color border. Now let's copy this code and paste it inside that invalid file function. And now instead of that adding drag over class, we'll remove. Now once again, if I drag and drop that PDF file, now you can see that red border. But for the file upload button, I want to keep the black text color. Okay. Now for the class arrow up, no. Now when you are giving that drag over for the class drop zone, at that time for the class arrow up, let's change its height and margin bottom value. So let's take it down there and let's change that height to 1 rem and for the margin bottom to 0 rem. As you can see, these values are changed. In order to give that transition, let's give the transition duration of 0.5 second, and for the time function, let's give age. So now once again, if I drag your file and let's take it to that drag zone, you can see the height and the margin bottom of arrow icon that is changed. But now you can see when you drop your file, that text color didn't change. Okay, so let's duplicate this code and let's take it to that upload file function. Now instead of that adding invalid class, remove that invalid class and instead we'll add valid class for that drop zone. And I want to add that valid class after 0.2 seconds. So I'm taking the help of set timeout function, but I haven't added that valid class in the standard CSS file. So now for the class drop zone, let's add that class valid. So I'm writing drop zone dot valid. So now when you're adding that class valid for the drop zone, at that time for the class arrow up, I want to give the transform translate y to minus 210%, and also let's give separate transition for that transform. I'm giving 0.5 second as the duration. For the time function, let's give ease, and for the transition delay, I'm giving 2 seconds. And also for the class bar, let's duplicate this code, and now instead of that class arrow up, let's change it to class bar and let's change that transform y to 630%. And also when you are adding that class valid for that class drop zone, at that time once again we want to change that before pseudo elements CSS value. So when everything is valid, at that time we'll give that animation, otherwise that animation won't be applied. So now once again, let's drag and drop this file so you can see this kind of animation. Similarly, when you drop your file, I want to remove that border around the box. So let's duplicate this code and let's remove that drag over class. But now whenever you are dragging and dropping that file, I want to hide all those upload icon, all those text. Okay, so for that again I'm taking the help of set timeout method, and after 3 seconds for the drop zone class we'll add the class hide, but that class hide we haven't give for that class drop zone. So in the standard CSS file for the class drop zone, let's give dot hide everything that is inside that div with class name drop zone. We want to give display none. And let's duplicate this code and let's take it to the invalid class. When there is invalid class, let's change that display none to display flex. So why I am giving flex? It's because for the class drop zone at the beginning you can see we have even there display flex. Otherwise the layout that you have built, that will be broken. So once again, let's drag and drop that file. You can see animation, it's working, and boom, everything is gone. Now it's time to display that file that you have uploaded. So for that, again, inside the same set timeout method, I'm giving drop zone dot style dot set property. So now I'm changing that CSS URL variable. You can see in the standard CSS file, initially for the URL variable, we haven't give there anything. So inside the URL function, but now in order to access that file, now we have to use file reader API. For that I'm writing let file reader is equal to new. Let's declare this file reader object, and we can write now file reader dot onload. So when the file that is fully loaded, at a time we want to call this arrow function. Now let's take that whole code inside that arrow function. So now you can write there file reader dot result. So with the help of this code, you will get the data file that you have uploaded. Now I have to write file reader dot read as data URL, and now I have to pass their file. Okay, I forgot to access that file, so you can see for the upload file function I have passed their file, this file that we have uploaded. So let's take it that file as file and let's pass the same variable file. So now you can see with the help of file reader API, when your file is fully loaded, at that time we will get the files data, but in order to read that file, again we have to pass our file inside that read as data URL method. Now once again, if I drag and drop my file, you can see after 3 seconds my file is displayed, but our image is repeating. So let's give background repeat to no repeat, and you can see for the div with class name dropzone, for the CSS URL variable we can get this long string. So this is the code that we get from that file reader.result. Once again, when invalid file function is triggered, I want to copy and paste that code. Now for the CSS URL variable, I want to change to that empty URL, so we won't display an image. And also let's duplicate this code and we'll remove that valid class from that class dropzone. So when the invalid file function is triggered, this code will be changed. So once again, if I drag and drop my file, after 3 seconds it will display, and once again if I drag and drop another file, so after 3 seconds it will display. But what I want to do is that when you drag and take your file to that drop zone, I want to bring back that upload icon and all those file upload buttons. So for that, let's duplicate this code, and before 3 seconds let's remove that class height from the drop zone, and also after 3 seconds I want to remove that valid class from the class drop zone. And now let's duplicate this code, and also let's change that CSS URL variable. So when upload file function is triggered, so after 3 seconds only we want to set that URL variables, otherwise we want to change back to that normal form. Okay, so once again if I drag and drop the file, image is displayed, and again once again if I drag and drop file, okay, this is exactly what I want. And once again let's duplicate this code and let's take it to that invalid file function. When the invalid file function is triggered, we'll remove that height class from the dropzone class, and also let's copy the same code and let's take it to that drag over function and let's paste it there. And also I want to copy that same URL variables code and let's paste it there. So okay, once again let's drag and drop the file. After 3 seconds it will display, and once again if I drag and drop and the file, you can see everything is working. If I upload PDF file, you can see that error message, and if I upload the MP4 file, you can see again you will get that error message. And also you can click that file upload button and you can upload any file. You can see all the animation that is working and everything is working perfectly. Once again if I hit that cross icon and if you hit OK, then everything is gone. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did learn something, smash that like button. If you have any kind of queries, let me know in the comment box. Share this video if you think someone needs it, and also if you haven't already hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell icon. Remember, there is always more to learn, so keep learning.